you sign up for an ultra distance event. How are you going to train for it? Well, one of the common thoughts is that if you sign up for an event that has lots of miles, then you do lots of miles at an endurance zone. And by the time the event comes along, you'll have found your pace. The other tact is that you throw in intervals throughout that long ride, with the concept being that you'll be stronger as you get more fatigued compared to what you would have been. This video is a case study on one of those long rides. We have a rider that's doing interval and interval-like efforts, and we have another rider that's pretty much just doing endurance zone. Now, we're going to compare how they are at the beginning of the ride and how they are at the end of the ride. Then we're going to talk about which is better. Hey, cycling community, this is Steve Grusis, the Cycling Greek. It's approaching 7 a.m. and it's Friday, and I'm doing a long ride on Friday because it's going to be raining tomorrow and it's going to be raining Sunday, so took a day off and I'm doing it. Brian and I organized a route. I stuck it on an LMR and a couple more people joining us, so that's good. Day's breaking. It's about 7 a.m. and I'm hoping to get in before dark. That's how long it's going to be. Usually do this for sun, but no sun. Okay, where is this here? Okay, it's over here. Oh man,
looks like it's gonna be a little bit chilly.
Actually, it's not bad. About 30 minutes after we took off, Juan and I picked up Brian, who's riding caboose right now, and we're on our way to pick up Steve and apparently a couple others who are doing their own ride but are connecting with us for part of ours. Juan by far is the strongest in our group. Regarding the two styles of training I mentioned earlier, I'll be doing the intervals and Brian will be doing the straight endurance. And it's even extended out to go meet Steve because I noticed that Brian was being very cagey, in other words very conservative, by letting Juan and I do the pulling. A half hour later, we picked up the other three. Now the pace, particularly with the addition of Steve M, was a little more brisk than it was with the original three of us. Steve is particularly strong on the flats, and he was going to be with us for just part of the ride. We got past the flats and into the undulations, including short, steep climbs just like this one here. I started rethinking what I was going to do because my original plan was to just do straight endurance, particularly since this ride is going to be a jump in my training. Before I had done like up to 105 miles and about 8,000, no more than 8,500 feet of climbing. This one was going to be maybe as much as 150 miles and 11,250 feet of climbing. The event I will be doing is 155 miles, 15,000 feet of climbing. Ordinarily on the following week when I would do that same distance in climbing, I would throw in intervals. It was on this climb where I decided to experiment. I don't have my rear camera on right now, but Brian is the only one behind me. And he's not having any of this. He is sticking with his original plan. One of the reasons I decided to experiment is that we have these fast trains at the beginning of the event that I'll be doing. And how I didn't prepare for this fast train at this double century that I did about half a year ago, and how I suffered for it. Now to the action on the screen. I looked behind me and I saw that Brian's way back there and that these guys are slowing up, and I don't want those two to go over the edge, not look behind them and split the group up. So I bridge up there and I let them know that Brian's back there, so I'm also hoping that they'll slow up and then I'll get to take a breather. Since I started from home, this is maybe 40 miles into the ride, and I still have 100 to go, with all that climbing too. Even though these weren't official intervals I was doing, I was taking sections of time and I was putting in some effort. So this next section came after the corrals that leads to the Wildcat Wall, and that wall we'll be talking about in a bit. So this section was about 15 minutes and it was undulation, and I actually averaged tempo. Now when I'm doing these intervals, especially for these long efforts, I'm usually doing tempo intervals. Sometimes I'll go a little higher. But especially when the distance and the climbing gets so long and I'm out there for so many hours, I keep it closer to tempo. Another reason I'm not going crazy with these intervals on these very long rides is that I'm subject to atrial fibrillation. We'll be talking about that in a bit too. And a Steve M ahead of me. And I didn't want to go too crazy to stay on his wheels, and I knew this steep climb was coming up, so then I just bided my time and I got up to him. As I mentioned earlier, his ride is going to be much, much shorter than mine. And I was also concerned about overcooking myself. So at a certain point, when I got above a certain intensity or started to approach it, I would just back off. He went on ahead of me. Eventually Juan caught up to me. He passed me up, and he and Steve were together as they hit the Wildcat Climb. With the other two riders doing their own thing, the only person behind me was Brian, and he was still doing his plan. Straight endurance. 10 o'clock already, seems.
Yeah.
Is he? Damn.
Yeah, I gotta get tougher. I learned to endure that first hour of cold. I just stepped out at, 7:30 and it was like, oh my God, it was overcast.
But the overcast kept the temperature up. Because otherwise it would have been in the 40s.
Well, right, overnight, right. But at that moment in time.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so when I took off, it was about 53 degrees. And so that was enough for me not to wear arm warmers and just kind of freeze a little bit.
He's got a secret weapon.
I say that's my secret right there.
Ah, yes, I like that.
Has it been in there or did it just fly in there?
No, I think it was inside the faucet when I...
Oh.
Jumping forward, we're starting on the Burroughs climb. Now, I don't have any film of the Wildcat climb. The Wildcat climb on that wall I was telling you about is about 1 mile long, and it's pretty darn steep. We regrouped at the top, and then the four of us took off. Now, we made the left turn, and so here we are, Burroughs climb. Now, this climb is about 16 and a half minutes, at least that it took me, and I was right at the borderline of upper endurance and tempo. Wattage was not the only thing I was watching. I was also watching my heart rate. While my wattage was at that zone 2, zone 3 border, my heart rate was clearly into tempo. So I think my LT1 is around 115, maybe 117 beats. And I averaged 123, and I had a high on this climb for about 138. Now, for many of you, that may not seem very high, but keep in mind, I'm almost 69, and my maximum heart rate is 164. Brian, keeping to his endurance pace, is way back there. We previously made the decision that we're going to regroup at the stop sign. Steve M. and Juan waited for Brian at the stop sign. I went on to the town of Toll House at the bottom of the next climb because I had to do an unscheduled stop. Once the others arrived, Brian continued up the climb. Steve M. bid us adieu as we returned back home. Juan and I started the 6.7 mile climb up Old Toll House. I was hoping I could hang on to Juan's wheel, but I'm not 41 anymore. He steadily and slowly pulled away from me. With us having well over 2/3 of the climbing left to go, I was starting to feel my previous efforts on this climb. This climb took me 1 hour, 5 minutes, and I averaged right in the middle of my endurance zone, and that is just under 200 watts. Just to give you some perspective, I think it was at age 41 where I had done a Old Tool House time trial, and I did it in just over 40 minutes and averaged 333 watts. I don't know how long it took Brian to do the climb, but he was anticipating 1 hour and 15 minutes, and he did start well ahead of us. So by the time I got there, they were waiting for me at the top. Then we went a little higher to a store called Cressman's, where we had our next rest stop. After we descended this climb that you see me climbing up, and I was feeling better on this climb than I was on the other one. First part of the climb took me a little over 14 and a half minutes, and it's about 1.75 mile and fairly steep. And I averaged again right in the middle of endurance. My heart rate also reflected that. I waited for Brian at the top of that so we can share pulls at this next false flat section. Now, where was Juan at this time? Well, he was dealing with something and was going to later catch up to us. The next part of this 12-mile climb is this 4-mile section that you're seeing me on now. This leads to what I call the initial top, where there's some climbing and some undulations after that. On this section, I really had to stay focused, particularly focus on my spin, because I was starting to get a little more tired. My average wattage on this was now below mid-endurance, but still endurance. Now my heart rate was just a little higher, so my heart rate didn't drop. I'm starting to get that cardiac drift, or maybe a little more cardiac drift. Brian was able to keep me in sight until about the last mile, where I picked up my pace just a little bit. When I got to the initial top, I kept rolling, and I was figuring that Brian would catch me. And when he did, he certainly looked fresher than I did. And more importantly, he rode like he was fresher than me. Fuck. Once we got to the top, Juan turned right so he can get home sooner. We turned left and made an unscheduled stop at the town of Toll House at the bottom of that first major climb because I needed some calories. I was having a calorie problem. When we got going again, we were trading pulls, but the closer we got to home, the less pulls I was taking and the more Brian was nursing me along. A number of times after a small section that requires some extra effort, What you're seeing now is what would happen. I wouldn't be able to keep up. Brian would go off. Then he'd see that I wasn't on his wheel. He'd slow down for me.
See you at the top.
That one took a while to get back up to him.
Oh, pardon? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Thank you very much. You are an angel.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. You too.
Thank you.
There you go.
You must have looked desperate.
I caught.
We went our separate ways after that intersection. He had about 3 miles to get home, and I had about 15. First thing I did is I stopped at a local Rite Aid, and I got a Snickers bar and some potato chips. On the final run before my house, I did an effort. At least I tried to do an effort. It seemed like an effort to me. It really only was endurance, but after 136 miles and 10,500 feet of climbing, that was an effort to me. So now the question is, which training method is better? So now we have the question, what type of method should you use for this type of training? Well, the answer is, it depends. And I think it mostly depends on experience. So when I was a younger cycling Greek, I used to dabble in double centuries and climb to Kaiser events like I'm training for now. And then I got back into it again last year, where I did a double century about 6 months ago. So my body's used to this type of training and used to this type of distance. So I use the interval method. Now in Brian's case, this is his first time he's doing anything like this. He's never done any double centuries. This is going to be his first climb to Kaiser. And so his coach has him focusing mainly on endurance. And that's what I would do if I was coaching him. So now let's talk about my AFIB situation in this type of training. When I first contracted AFIB about 9 years ago, I made a bunch of lifestyle changes. And one of them was I gave up long distance events. Last year, I started with a client and she was focusing on ultra distance events. So I started training with her and I saw that I could do the mileage without any negative effects. I did notice that whenever I took a jump in mileage and elevation gain, then my heart would be talking to me after the ride. It'd feel like a weakness. I wasn't necessarily having a lot of palpitations, but it just felt a little odd. So then I would just take it easy the rest of the day, take it easy the next day, and then I was fine after that. And then when I did that same mileage and elevation gain the following week, I was fine. So there was an adaptation factor. Still, I had to be careful in that situation, and I encountered that same situation after this ride that you saw in the video. So not only did I have a elevation gain and a mileage gain over what I did the previous weeks, but because I was with a stronger group, because usually I would do solo rides, it was a lot more intense. And then when I got home, I had that same type of weakness, so I just took it easy the rest of the day, what was left of the rest of the day, because it was a long ride. And I took it easy the next day. And the thing I did physically was go on a walk with the Fetching Mrs. Cycling Greek. Now it's the following day, and I may do a Zwift race. I'll see how I feel. For those of you that are doing ultra distance training, what method do you use? Comment below. And speaking of that, you know the drill. Comment, like, subscribe. The Cycling Greek.
Holy crap. Oh, fuck. Oh, holy crap. Oh. Oh, man. Oh, fuck. Oh. Fuck. Fuck. Oh, so I'm so sorry. Oh, it was a long day. So. Oh. Oh, man.